was first, the wakefulness or the sleep state? This is actually an idea I recently heard when I listened to Andrew Huberman's podcast, Huberman Lab, where he discussed with Matthew Walker, a sleep scientist, sleep basically. Because what else would a sleep scientist discuss? So he brought up the idea, or rather maybe the theory already, that we don't quite know whether being awake is actually kind of a state that comes before the sleep, or if the sleep actually was the natural state and being awake is just basically an addition, evolution added for some reason, probably for some evolutionary benefit reason. And I think this idea is quite interesting because it also explores the part of the consciousness question, where the question is, what is consciousness? It's not really that it is directly answering this question, but much more that it's also in the same field of questions, I guess. So when it comes to the sleep state and the awake state, what you also could ask is, what was first? You could also ask, what was first? The consciousness, or the other part of our brain that is basically not consciousness, that is basically there and creates so many things in our lives, like for example an environment around us that we just can perceive. We just are basically a user. And this is something that came up in thinking about this again and again and again. If you think about dreaming, for example, you live in a world, or you experience a world that is basically a dream world, but you, most of the time, have no clue whatsoever that it actually is a dream world and it is not the real world. So therefore, if you then ask the question, who then creates this dream world you live in and don't have a clue about it, and this dream world is so close to reality that you just don't realize that you as the conscious mind are basically not the admin, but the user. And I think this is a very good comparison. And this also, again, comes into place when we then try to answer the question, what was first, the sleep state or the state of being awake? Because it's essentially something very similar. The state of being asleep could be just the absence of wakefulness. Obviously, we also have the states of wakefulness when being in a dream or when being asleep, but waking up out of this reality, this dream reality, into the real reality is basically a concept that can also be seen in the context of the simulation theory. Because the problem kind of is, if there are simulated realities, so here is simulation theory in short. For one, simulation of virtual realities will become better at a certain rate. For two, somehow somebody will be interested in creating simulated realities. And for three, the actual back end is also there. So actually these are only kind of two assumptions, because the back end assumption, basically assuming that the computing. So I had to take a long break in between regarding the recording. So to sum it up, first of all, we took a closer look at what it actually means to dream and to be awake. So basically to be asleep and to be awake, the two different states we can basically be in. This also obviously kind of connects with the two extremes of being relaxed. So with the state of sleep being a very relaxed state, and also the side, being alert as the opposite of being relaxed. Then we already discussed the connections between sleep and wakefulness, and also the kind of connection with the two systems we have in our mind, coined by Daniel Kahneman, System 1 and System 2. With System 2 being the rational mind, the you we think of, or the part of our brain that we think of as us, and the other part being the automatic part of our mind we cannot really control. We can try to influence it by using System 1, but we cannot directly control it. Such as, I can move my hand, but I cannot slow down my breath. I mean, with breath it works, obviously, but I cannot slow down my heart rate by just thinking about it. That's the idea. Then we also discussed the simulation theory, the approach to simulation theory, and how this all connects together. So therefore, to sum it up, I think just the idea of what was first, basically the user or the administrator. I mean, it seems to be obvious that the administrator was first. So therefore, if you think about it, we think we are the admin of our body, kind of. But that's actually not really the case, because our body, so System 2, can just override the rational mind many times. And this happens over and over again. And it also can just shut the user basically out of the system by, for example, going into coma, by going into sleep. And if we actually sleep and we dream, then System 2 creates a reality for us. So basically, there is a bigger virtual machine that creates a reality that is so close to the actual reality we experience on a day-to-day basis that we cannot even distinguish between those two realities. And therefore, I think just following an idea like this is something that's very interesting.